Maybe you'll hear the rain. It's raining pretty heavily outside. But have you ever wondered why the people who proclaim themselves capitalists, which, newsflash, most of us are not capitalists because we do not own mines, we do not own roads, we do not own kilometers upon kilometers of land. So most of people who claim to be capitalists, they're not. Capitalists do not announce themselves on the internet. They don't use plebeian internet. They probably have their own exclusive internet. But I digress. Have you ever wondered why such people who proclaim themselves in support of capitalism, why they even bother engaging with you and I, right? With the commies, with the socialists, whatever. If they're so happy with capitalism, if capitalism is treating them so well, why don't they go off and enjoy their freaking yachts? Why don't they go off and have fun? Well, I'll tell you why, because again, just as I said before, those people who proclaim themselves capitalists, they're not. They just don't understand what capitalism is. But many people who react very strongly to commies on the internet, or to commies in general, are the people who are actually the most in need for communism and the theory and in fellow comrades. These are usually the people who are plagued the most with fear and anxiety about what is to come tomorrow. And I really do relate to that, because for many years I was just like them. I was afraid, but unfortunately for me, I was too well-mannered to actually spew nonsense on the internet and bother other people. I was too afraid of appearing a certain way, and that was probably what saved me from embarrassing myself. But anyway, if you want to psychoanalyze people on the internet, don't do that, obviously, but you can apply these tools that I mentioned before, the dialectical materialist tools, to figure out something about yourself and possibly think about what other people may go through. Again, not to necessarily win an argument, but generally just to understand why people do what they do. Because for me, for example, it's very important to understand people's motivation. And when I understand, just as I keep on saying, that most of this anger that comes from such people, it is the fear reaction that the vast majority of us possess, then it makes my life easier, because I realize it has nothing to do with me. It actually has a lot to do with the way these people see the world. And I can totally relate to that fear and anxiety. I can totally relate to the fear of mortality. So this is what I've been thinking a lot lately, that a lot of this anxiety that I've been discussing here, and a lot of that fear response that I've given the example of Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, Hayao Miyazaki's movie, where she's asking those creatures and people that are trying to attack her, she's asking, what are you afraid of? So I've given this example before because I think it is the one that really truly portrays the modern reactance type of behaviors. And I think that the vast majority of the people, they do this because ultimately they see in a lot of these different cues, they see painful reminder that they're going to die. And the fear of mortality appears to be a very in-your-face, obvious answer to the vast majority of human problems, right? Because we're finite, we do not like to be reminded of the fact that we're finite. But I think that a lot of the analysis of religion, especially if you're able to distance yourself from religious trauma, which takes a lot of time. I haven't had bad religious trauma, but I still had some. And it took me a few years to become a little bit more neutral. I had to experience a lot of that grief, a lot of that pain and suffering that was imposed on me by those belief systems that ultimately aim to portray humans as sinners, right? And bad and flawed since birth. And I had to really grapple with those before I looked at religion as a ideological tool that was necessary for the time being. It used to actually bring some good to the people, but after it started decaying, after it lost its use, it was picked up as an ideological tool by various different groups of people, and it was used by the feudal lords, it was used by all kinds of socioeconomic formations before capitalism, and capitalism kind of continued kind of almost automatically carrying through some of the remnants of monotheistic religions. So monotheistic religions are not necessarily the devil, but when you look at the fears that are kind of hidden behind a lot of the belief systems and teachings and sayings in certain religious groups, this can really help you understand what it is these people are afraid of. And ultimately, the fear of mortality is a big part of, I believe, the Judeo-Christian or Abrahamic religions, because there is no place for graceful death, and there isn't much discussion of death beyond God, right? And God as a symbol, God as the representation of unity of everything, I think it has kind of lost this meaning a long time ago in Judeo-Christian religions, those type of monotheistic religions. And I think what it became instead is this perversion of that fear of losing control, and God being the representation of this ultimate man winning over nature and ruling over nature, a very modernist kind of a postulate. I think that this has really led to a lot of the taboos surrounding death, and this is what a lot of people are still having to grapple with, is that they do not have culture of death, and this fear of death is very blind. People have always been afraid of mortality. It is our ultimate basic fear. It's absolutely normal, but I personally believe, and I cannot really back it up with anything but my own thoughts, they have evolved, these belief systems have evolved to become this death cult, which is, by the way, I was lying to you before. Eric Fromm was talking about this, of course, in Zen Buddhism and psychoanalysis. But I've been thinking about this before as well. And I've been thinking about how, well, because we do not see death as the normal part of our life cycle, and we are not taught to come into contact with death and approach it as something that is a necessary part of our existence, because of this, we had over time developed all of these almost irrational fears of death that are not very normal. It's like we cannot give up not only control when we're alive, it's like we cannot give up control even when we're dead. We want heaven, we want angels, we want somebody to provide a life for us that we have envisioned that we have not been granted when we're alive. And I'm not going to talk about all the weird cults, because I know people have been probably talking a lot about a lot of interesting cults. I know a little bit more than the average person about some of these, because I've come in contact with some of these people in the past. It was an interesting experience, but don't ask me. It's long gone. I don't really would like to think about it. But I did read a lot of the Rapture books, and I was mortified about the possibilities. So yeah, but ultimately what I'm trying to say is that a lot of the modern people cannot cannot submit themselves to the idea that they're going to die. And I'm having a hard time phrasing this. They cannot come to peace with, I believe that is the phrase, right? They cannot come to peace with the idea that they will ultimately die, and that they want to continue living through their progeny, they want to continue living through their legacy, they want to continue living through whatever means which are actually connected to the unity of everything, right? And the struggle and unity of everything is the law of life. It is not something that you can take away from anyone. When you die, you are going to return to the ashes. When you die, you are going to lose human consciousness, but you will not completely disappear. Yes, we cannot imagine what it is to live without a consciousness, but why would you want to imagine that? That's strange. I've actually tried very hard for many years to envision what it is like to lack consciousness, but I can't because I have consciousness. So why would we preoccupy ourselves with being afraid of something that is simply not known to us, but will be a part of our existence, whether we like it or not? And I think that a lot of cultures throughout the world for many, many thousands of years have created a lot of ceremonies and rituals and practices that are based on accepting death as a part of life, as a part of a life cycle. And I think that a lot of the people nowadays are just starting to study some of these kind of religions and traditions and cultures of the past to find a new way of relating to death. And I agree that capitalism ultimately is the death cult. It leads to the destruction of everything. So of course, it is going to start on an individual level, of course, with you slowly losing your mind over the fact that you have no control over the fact that you're going to die. You have no control over your own life. So you become completely hopeless and you succumb to nihilism, doomerism, whatever people call it nowadays. But yeah, we do need to look this fear in the face, and we do need to realize that the fact that we die is actually a blessing, because why would you want to live forever? Even if you had a perfect society, you're going to get bored. Your nervous system is going to get so overstimulated. You're going to keep on forgetting things. You're going to continue all these cycles over and over and over again. That would be boring. That would be terrible. But we don't have to worry about that, right? Immortality is not in the books for any of us. But what we can do is grapple with the fact that we are going to die. But meanwhile, what are we going to do with the lives that we have, with the time that we have? Very banal things that I'm afraid that a lot of people are losing touch with. And I think that Afro-pessimism is a concept that I was introduced to fairly recently, is really something that can help people relate to themselves, their communities, and death a little bit better. Because if you have no hope, you have nothing to lose. If you have no future, why not find people to share the time with now and organize with now, so that your now can be improved without having to wait for some kind of reward in the afterlife. So this is ultimately what I always advocate for: organizing, not just for some bright abstract future, but for yourself today. Because if you talk to people today, you're able to relate to them in any meaningful way. If you make yourself feel better and other people better, if you're able to find little things to do together, maybe read some Marx, just saying, you're going to do no wrong to yourself. There is a lot that can go wrong, but ultimately you're going to die and everyone's going to forget about it. So why worry about it now? Okay, so this is it for this little video. Let me know what you think. I hope you have a great day today. Consider supporting me on Patreon to take care of yourself and your community first. Subscribe to all the other social medias I have posted down below, even though I don't do anything there, but maybe one day I will. And I'll talk to you sometime later.